One, two, three, four.
The biggest pivot that Theater Dybbuk has engaged with over the last few months is that we've really moved from doing in-person live theatrical works, which are now postponed for quite a while, to doing audio series work, podcasts, that also have online learning engagement opportunities. So we've created this podcast called the Dybbuk Cast, and it really operates on Theater Dybbuk's thesis, out of this thesis, that Jewish history, because of Jews being in so many different societies throughout time, is a great entry point to have complex conversations about the forces in society and in various communities. About assimilation, identity, dominance, subjugation, all of it. And so the Dybbuk Cast is this podcast that what we do in each episode is we take a creative text from some point in Jewish history. This could be a play, a poem, song lyrics, a mythological narrative. And we hear selections from that creative text performed by Theater Dybbuk actors, intersected with an interview with a scholar or an expert who can talk about what was going on in society at the time that this text was created, and perhaps the legacy of the text and how it still speaks to things today. And so each episode you hear these selections, and then you hear a little interview, and then you hear another selection, and they create a kind of web of experience that you can process and take in and think about not only that history, but think about our world at this moment and what forces are still at play today. And then in addition, people can go on our website, and with each episode, we actually have links to additional places to learn and understand what we're speaking about. We also even have online teaching guides for those who engage with students, for people to actually think about the themes that are present in the episode and be able to work on those themes with both adult and youth learners. And, this is a pivot and not at the same time. It's a pivot in that we're a theater company, and suddenly we're making sort of quasi-documentary podcasts, right, with online learning. So that's a pivot. At the same time, we are a company that believes that utilizing artistic forms to open up new understanding about our world and about ourselves is important, is valuable, and can really impact how we interact with one another and how we interact with the systems in our society. And so, although the form may be changing, the function remains the same. So the idea to engage with different scholars and different partners per episode came from a few different places. One, I want to give a shout out to the origin of this idea in general, which was my colleague, Irit Jaffe-Berg, who is also a scholar, who is an official artist with Theater Dybbuk, came to me over the summer and said, I love this, 16th century chivalric romance written in Yiddish and called Bovo Buch. And I think Theater Dybbuk might be able to do something with this. And I thought, I love this idea, and actually we're experimenting with form. Let's try something out. Irit, do you want to be interviewed and talk about society, and we'll read the work? So it was really organic with her. And we did, I love, our ensemble joked. I said, it's our experiment, in a little experiment in a form, and it's a 3-episode, 2.5-hour experience, with 7 actors and a scholar. And so I want to give credit, though, that it was my colleague who came to me with this idea, and we then ran with it. And I found it very inspiring. So that's one, is discovering that there are people, with expertise. There are these great texts. How do we put them together? Experimenting with that led to an even larger version of that idea being born. Two, regarding how we came to the form of different partners and different scholars each episode, is that this is how Theater Dybbuk operates. So again, even if the form is changing, the kind of ethos or way of doing things is not fundamentally changing. We always work in partnership. All of our shows are presented at different venues with different partners, and it's part of the way we expand our community and speak to a variety of needs, is by recognizing there are organizations doing great work out there, and how do we leverage what they're doing, and how do they leverage what we're doing in order to serve the most people. So really, again, while it feels brand new, this is an expansion of how we operate and speaks truly to what we've been doing over the years. Three, I thought, everyone right now is going through, obviously, a measure of uncertainty. Some organizations are figuring out how they do more with less. Meaning more might even just mean we're trying new forms, but our budgetary constraints are greater. And I thought, how do we also be of service to these great organizations that are doing great work by providing really good and meaningful content that they can utilize without them having to put a ton of resources behind it, but being able to put their marketing muscle and their expertise behind it. And so I thought, boy, this is a win-win. It's good for everybody if we do it well. So the first episode of the Dybbuk cast is called I Tell You. And the reason it's called I Tell You is that is the name of a religious school journal from 1926 that a synagogue, Congregation Rodef Shalom in Philadelphia, published to share the essays of its students and a piece of writing from the rabbi, as well as this amazing, I think it's about a seven-page children's play called The Little Hasmoneans. That is a Hanukkah play. So it's this remarkable document that has not only a piece of theater in it, but also has all these perspectives of people at that time in history. That is combined with an interview with Dr. Miriam Heller-Stern, who illuminates what was going on in American Jewish history at that time. If what we're interested in is talking about Jewish history as an entry point to talk about society, what an amazing document to help us do that. The fact that it really digs into the complexities of identity, the desire to be both, as Miriam says in the episode, both part and a part, right? And I love that it blatantly deals with that. And I think right now in our world, as we're thinking about identity and belonging and who has power and who doesn't and what the levers of power are, a work that allows us to think about that for the Jewish community can also allow us to think about that for our world in general. Recognizing, of course, that every community has its own particular challenges and its own particular strengths. Episode 2 is inspired by exploring the Book of Enoch. The episode is presented in collaboration with the Philosophical Research Society. And the Book of Enoch is one of these texts that didn't make it into the Torah or into the Bible. It's fascinating because it actually is an exploration of a character named Enoch, who is an ancestor of Noah's. And it weaves this amazing apocalyptic tale. And we are going to be hearing selections from this apocalyptic work and an interview with Dr. Greg Salyer, in which he talks about the emotional value of apocalyptic or end times literature, about why this literature might have been created at a certain place in time that aligns with where people are in society and what power they do or do not hold. He talks about borrowing, cultural borrowing, about when you take from one narrative for the purpose of another and how that happens all the time. And what do we do with that? And when is it problematic appropriation? And when is it, positive homage or reinterpretation? One of the things that makes us who we are as a company is we do high risk, high reward work, right? The challenge of the work, both for the people making it and for the people receiving it, is purposeful. And I'm proud of that. And it also means there can be some alienation and some difficulty. And that's okay. There's, and I know that seems countercultural at the moment to say when there are a lot of difficulties, but nonetheless, I still think it's important. It was entertainment usually isn't on my mind, if I'm being really frank. No one ever's like, boy, I was so entertained at a Theater Dybbuk show. I hope that doesn't keep anyone away from coming to a Theater Dybbuk show.